Thank you, everyone, for joining us. My name is Steve Lewis here with Legacy Horn Experience, and I'm chatting with Kevin Newton, Jeff Scott, and David Jolley about chamber music and all things woodwind quintet. This is our third segment. We're going to talk about some of the technical issues for the horn player in wind quintet music. Um, let's start with Kevin on this one. How did David Jolley's teaching, how does his playing inspire, inform your approach to wind quintet playing?
I am so happy that you asked this question. I've been kind of burning to talk about this. So Mr. Jolley was the first soloist that I fell in love with. Like the sound and the sensitivity of the playing is really prodigious. It's unprecedented, really. And so as a young player, I was playing on an 8D, and had been told all these things about how an 8D sound and what it means to be an 8D player and that kind of thing. So I had all this baggage, built in. And then I was learning the villanelle. Like I just randomly this, but I had a really great band director and he encouraged me like, oh, go look at some solo music. So I said, oh, okay, what's that? So I went and found the villanelle and I said, oh, okay, this sounds cool. I'm gonna learn it. And so that was my first recording was Mr. Jolly's recording of the villanelle that I heard. And I had never experienced anything like that before. I'd never heard um such such refined playing before, and it really shifted my mind into how it shifted my mind from thinking the way I had previously been thinking, like everything is big and loud and dark, and to suddenly it's like, oh, actually, like the horn really can float and sing and be this light, effervescent presence in the music. And that really comes from Mr. Jolly, and it really deeply inspired me, and it totally changed the way that I played. I started trying to figure out how to make that sound, um, because it really resonated with me. It's what I heard in my heart, which I didn't know that you could do that on the horn. And so then that transfers. Then when I never thought. It's funny, as a kid, I never thought of Mr. Jolly as a wind quintet player. I didn't really even know what a wind quintet was. I really just thought of him as a soloist, and I learned as I got older the other things that he did. Um, but that kind of sound, finding a place for that sound, the wind quintet was that place. So then once I realized that, oh, the wind quintet is where I can make this sound, where I can learn how to play with the sensitivity. Um, that's what I did. It's like Imani Winds turned me to that, and then I brought that sound concept into the wind quintet. And so I was lucky in that way. It had already started to be built because of the inspiration of that sound and trying to learn to play in that way. And it's absolutely necessary um, for the quintet.
Great. Jeff, same question for you. How did Mr. Jolly's approach and teaching inform your quintet playing and your playing in general?
Yeah, kind of basically the same sort of premise. I started out on an 8D, came to Manhattan School playing it. Mr. Jolly, of course, was playing an 8D and was able to make a sound and a color that, at least at the time, wasn't the norm that you would expect out of an 8D player. And then I had these, people that I looked up to that were in the studio, people like Chris Comer, Katie Dennis. They were playing on ADs, and they were able to make it, to, dance and do all the things and sound like angels. And I say, well, it is possible. And so, I mimicked, my teacher and my colleagues, and learned that you could make different colors. It's all about what your perception is. I think like Jerome Ashby, who rest his soul, was another teacher of mine, but his approach to the 8D was completely different from Mr. Jolly's. Same instrument, but it's just the concept, and it really just goes to show that depending on what you perceive of sound is how you'll end up sounding like on your instrument. And I think Mr. Jolly would sound like Mr. Jolly if he played on an acorn. It's just it's he's
Oh,
one of
you
the
heard
sweetest.
those recordings. Oh, okay.
So it's angelic in its perception. And then getting into Imani Winds, the first thing I thought was, oh, I'm going into a wind quintet. I probably should get a little bit of a lighter instrument. And so I had this 667 sitting in the closet somewhere. And I pulled it out and I played on it. And I remember Monica Ellis just kind of saying, "Oh, what's that?" I was like, "Oh, yada, yada, yada. Oh, I want to hide. I want to be in a," and, a couple of months into it, I remember her literally after one time, she was like, "Can you bring the AD back, please?" It's like, I can't hear you.
Fantastic.
And you can ask her, did you ever talk to her? She's like, I can't hear you. I said, I'm sitting right next to you, Jeff, and I can't hear you. Oh, and part of it was also that, and I know Kevin can attest to this, that Imani Winds really goes for the extreme spectrum of colors and sounds. And that's something that a lot of it is repertoire driven. And so when we're playing really the aggressive sort of, you know, driven music, there's an edge in a certain color that you're going for. And then they can go and play something by Rena Esmail, and it's a completely different color that's being asked for. And I think, the kind of allows you, and it's always been that kind of an instrument, it allows you to have all those different colors. But I owe it to the example that was set by Mr. Jolley.
Yeah, I'm so glad you all brought up the use of the 8D in the wind quintet. I mean, on this call, it's probably the only three guys on the planet that are using 8Ds in a real wind quintet. And if I may, I'll just share this one experience. In my lessons with Mr. Jolley, I remember very specifically in my notebook this diagram is just a circle with a dot in the middle of it, and this notion that we create the very center of the sound. That's our job, and let the horn ring. We create this small, intense airstream. Right, we create the center of the sound, and I mean that was such a. It was an inspiring moment to know that that kind of control is really what drives the 8D. It's not this vacuum cleaner just sucking the air out of you. It really can be a finesse instrument. So that was a real moment for me. So, David, what experiences in chamber music informed your approach? I mean, you talked about some of your early experiences very early on playing chamber music. You were kind of spoiled by that.
Yes, very spoiled. Of course, didn't know how spoiled I was, but very spoiled, absolutely spoiled. But all of you speak so well about everything, and it's just like, just one great point after another. It's wonderful to hear. The one thing I would say, slightly cynical, is when you're in a wind quintet, the woodwind players, they have no idea. They have no idea what we're going through. They are so clueless. The oboist can complain about their reed a little bit. Oh, my reed. Or you're at altitude, so what does it do to the reed? And it's like you just don't even bother. You don't start to say, oh, it's a little different here. You just don't even go there. And the other thing is that woodwind players can play anything. I mean, they can play a zillion notes. So I remember the first time I arranged a Debussy piece from piano. And it was like, well, I don't know what's going to happen with this. looks pretty wild to me. And they just sat down and read the damn thing. They could just like, and that really set me thinking. I thought, they can do anything. So they still tease me about some of the things I write for them, because it's like, even Morelli, he says, Jolly, Jolly, it's impossible, and that's Morelli talking. So that's fun. But I would say, and I'm sure I'm echoing something. I'm not sure, Kevin, if you said it, but every bit of color, every bit of control that you can find, you're going to need in wind quintet. And I think it's not the same in a brass group, right? Because number one, you're among friends, everybody plays a brass instrument. So it's a different kind of sort of camaraderie. But in a wind quintet, it's like you need every color you've got. And so it sets you searching. And so I, like you all, it set me searching. And it was a big part of soloism or playing in any group. It's really true. And that comes from wind quintet, which, I don't know. Well, I mean, you guys have taken the quintet to such heights now, and it gets such respect. That in itself is phenomenal. But like when I was beginning, the wind quintet, it was like, sort of like a brass quintet. It's not really a string quartet. It's not really a piano trio. Wind quintet. But now, and that you guys have accomplished, and that's fabulous. That's really fabulous.
All right. Thank you all. Steve Lewis here with Legacy Horn Experience. I've had a great time chatting with Kevin Newton, Jeff Scott, and David Jolley about Wind Quintet. We have one more segment we'll do, so stay tuned for that.